Back here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Jeep. The NBA draft about 2 weeks away. Finally, I feel like we've been talking about it for so long. We're taking a deep dive into Kyle Boone's latest mock draft. We're all wondering what direction Atlanta is going to go. We have a bit of a switch here at the top with the Frenchman in this latest mock. Zaccharie Risacher. Mike O'Donnell's giving me a thumbs up. I nailed that pronunciation there. Going first overall to Atlanta, Alex Sarr, who has been in that #1 spot a lot, going to Washington. We have the maker of the mock, Kyle Boone, with us, and then we also have Mike O'Donnell joining us in studio to kind of discuss. And we're starting at the top. Also, Kyle Boone teased that this mock has a lot of drama, and we're going to get to that drama at the end. But let's start at the top, Kyle Boone. Risacher, #1. Why are you putting him here #1 instead of Alex Sarr? Explain the switch for us here in this latest mock draft.
Yeah, I think right now, the last time I did a hit on my latest mock draft, it was that we're writing #1 in pencil at this very moment. The Atlanta Hawks had a 3% chance of winning the #1 pick, so I think they're playing some catch up. I don't even think they know exactly which direction they will go. Alex Sarr is a guy who I think can be a really good defensive anchor, but Risacher kind of fits the mold of where the NBA is going. He's 6'9", can put it on the floor, he can score it. I think multi-positional defensive versatility brings to the table. He's a very good shooter. So yeah, I think there's some optionality that he brings to the table that may be more appealing for the Atlanta Hawks than maybe what Alex Sarr would present for them at #1.
Yeah, I think Risacher, he's a 6'8" hybrid forward out of France, and he's 19 years old. And Kyle talked a little bit about defensively. If you're drafting Risacher, you are drafting him for his defensive ability. And we're going to show highlights of him on the offensive end. He averaged 10 points a game, a big positive at 6'8". He's over 38% from three. But every single scout that has scouted him in Europe, over in the Combine, says the same thing. He might be the best off-ball defender in the draft. Very good physical tools, allows him to be a menace defensively, and so you're drafting him for the upside of saying, okay, he's 38% from three in Europe. Could he be at a minimum that level in the NBA, sitting in the corner below the break, knocking down corner threes, and then at 6'8", he has enough physical tools and athleticism to guard almost 1 through 4 position-wise. So that's why you're drafting him. #1, defense. #2, the potential offensively.
Another draft where we get a Frenchman at that #1 spot, potentially. Either way you go. Let's jump over to that 3rd spot, Kyle. Right now you have Sheppard going to the Rockets at that #3 spot. Obviously one of the best shooters, especially beyond the arc when it comes to Sheppard's game. What do you like about the fit there at #3 to the Rockets?
Yeah, plug and play. That's what I like about Sheppard. He shot 52.1% from three-point range as a true freshman at Kentucky last season. You go to synergy data, he actually rated in the 100th percentile in catch-and-shoot situations. No one was better than him shooting the basketball, and a really historic season as a true freshman. I think that shot is obviously going to translate, but defensively, I know Mike probably loves this as well. I think he's a playmaker on defense. He has a really high IQ. It translates to steals at a really high level as a true freshman in the SEC. I think there's a really high floor for Sheppard, and so, a draft that is pretty wide open in terms of how NBA teams view the top of this class. Sheppard, I think, is someone who will be a very good NBA player for a very long time. And I think that means a lot to a team like the Houston Rockets picking at '3.
I don't really like agreeing with Kyle Boone so often, but that was like spot-on analysis. And he's right defensively. Everybody's going to initially look at and say, 6'2" combo guard, is that big enough for the NBA at that kind of level? I'm going to say yes, because of his ability on the defensive end from a stealing standpoint, off-ball defense. He is way stronger than people give him credit for. He is way more athletic than people give him credit for. And the Rockets need shooting, desperately need outside shooting. And Sheppard is the best three-point shooter in the draft, period. He shot over 50% from three, like Kyle said. That's something that no collegiate first-rounder has done since Michigan's Glenn Rice in 1989. Had the highest effective field goal percentage of any freshman in college basketball. And at his worst, he's the 3rd best defender in the draft, in my opinion. picks. You're getting the best shooter in the draft, and you're getting, at worst, the third best defender in the draft. This is a no-brainer for the Rockets. It's the perfect spot. I think Kyle is absolutely dead on correct.
It's crazy when we think about him coming out of high school being, what, like a top 80, top 100 player, and now we're talking about him going number 3 overall.
But his recruiting never really was in a lot of question, because you just assumed he was going to go to Kentucky because of his parents. So they never got the big buzz of, is he going to Kentucky? Where is he going to go? That's why he kind of fell under the radar recruiting-wise.
Okay, let's get to the Spurs, and we're talking about Wemby, last year's #1 overall pick, getting some guard help, Kyle Boone from national champ Stephon Castle and Rob Dillingham.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Stephon Castle and Rob Dillingham for the Spurs, who are picking at number 4 and number 8. Stephon Castle, tremendous defensive prospect, questionable on offense. Maybe not a true point guard at the NBA level. Someone who I think really needs to improve his shot to be a more consistent threat. But Rob Dillingham, one of the most electric offensive weapons in this draft class. Some question marks on defense. So I think the pair together, Dillingham, great on offense, Castle, elite on defense, could really upgrade the Spurs backcourt, which I think is going to be a priority for them this offseason. They're trying to surround Victor Wembanyama with a ton of talent. I think Dillingham, with his offense, his playmaking, his scoring ability, kind of a microwave scorer, a spark plug off the bench, could be really impactful. And then Stephon Castle, I think, has like the highest potential ceiling of anyone in this draft class. And I think there's a chance that he should be in the mix at number 1 as well. So getting him at number 4, I think, for the Spurs, and then coming back with Dillingham at number 8 makes a lot of sense.
I think it's a huge win if the Spurs get Castle at 4. I really do. Kyle said it. Everything hinges upon his outside shooting. If that improves at all, I'm not talking 25, 30%. If that improves 10%, Castle has all the tools to be an all-star in the NBA one day. He's that good defensively. He has those kind of intangibles. And if you speak to any college coach and then NBA coach who has scouted Castle, they're going to say the same thing. Pro approach, mature demeanor, toughness, intangibles. He has all the skill sets to be a true lead guard in the NBA for a very long time. You pair him with Wembanyama, he's going to have to be great in the pick and roll. And why Kyle also adds Rob Dillingham into that mix from a drafting perspective for the Spurs is you got to think about spacing and the fact that Castle, not a great three-point shooter, that comes with time. Dillingham was the microwave of the SEC. Outside of Dalton Kennett in college basketball, nobody got hotter quicker than Rob Dillingham. And also, I've watched enough film on the lead guards. Dillingham is the best ball handler in the draft, period. We just talked about Reed Sheppard, best shooter in the draft. Dillingham, the best ball handler in the draft. In transition between him and Wembanyama, that's a dangerous combo from San Antonio.
Yeah, so much needed help for a San Antonio team that's been waiting to get back to the top of the NBA as we were so used to seeing them. Castle, of course, won a national championship. Kyle, they beat out the topic of our next conversation here. That, of course, is Zach Edey, who spent the last couple of seasons playing with Purdue. We know the caliber of player that he can be, kind of that old school style of basketball for him. And in your latest mock draft, I'm sure he would enjoy seeing this. You have him going home to Toronto. Tell us a little bit more about that and that fit.
Yeah, I'm going to need actually maybe the NBA Jam music here because I'm 3 for 3. I'm heating up. Mike has agreed with me on every point so far. Zach Edey, number 19 to the Toronto Raptors. I think it makes a lot of sense. The Raptors really love size. Edey is from Toronto. He's dominated college basketball the last 2 seasons, was player of the year. The year prior was player of the year this past season. Led college basketball in points per game this past season. Led college basketball in player efficiency rating. Just a dominant big man. And, I think there's some questions. Obviously, he's more of a throwback big man. He doesn't have a three-point shot at this very moment. But, seeing him at the NBA Draft Combine, I think there's some optimism within NBA circles that he's going to be able to add some floor spacing to his game at some point. And when you add that, you could potentially add that on top of his dominant interior game, both on offense and on defense. I think there's a real value to be had. And Zach Edey, I think, falling to number 19, we could look back in a few years and think, how did the 2-time player of the year, the best player in college basketball, slip all the way to number 19?
Yeah, I'll half disagree with Kyle Boone's pick, so I don't want to give him all the credit in the world. He's right. If Zach Edey falls to 19 to Toronto, it's a huge steal. It's a big win. I think Zach Edey should go before pick 19. But it would be such a great story and a homecoming story if he does fall to Toronto at 19 for all the reasons that Kyle said. But also, you know I don't like hot taking too much. I think everybody's nuts. I think Zach Edey's going to be really good in the league for two reasons in particular. I think he has one of the most underrated IQs in college basketball we've seen for the last 2 years, which has enabled him to be more than just a dominant 7-foot center. His IQ passing out of the post, understanding angles defensively and offensively has drastically improved over the course of his career at Purdue, and he is way more mobile than the obvious comparison that he's going to get from Yao Ming.
Yeah.
Laterally, he is much better than Yao Ming was, and also his conditioning was incredible. Never gets talked about. Would play 38 minutes a game without blinking an eye at that size is almost unheard of. Yao Ming couldn't do it. That's why I think Zach Edey has the potential enough to be a better version of Yao Ming in the NBA. The game's different when Yao played, but I think he can be even better than Yao Ming.
You're not alone. Our colleague Chris Walker is really high on Zach Edey as well. We're going to talk about another interesting storyline here with Bronny James going to the Miami Heat in the second round. And Kyle, was the thought process here maybe like this is somewhere where LeBron could potentially go for the latter half of his career? Is that why we're pairing Bronny with Miami?
No, it's not LeBron related. It's not Pat Riley being vindictive relating. It's Bronny James is a legitimate NBA prospect. I think he should be drafted somewhere in the second round. The Miami Heat pick at 43, and I think Bronny James, just given the fact that the Heat have such a great developmental program historically, they have probably some confidence that, hey, we could get Bronny James in here. We could develop him into a real NBA potential role player, a contributor at some level. Obviously the storylines would be fantastic because, LeBron James won a couple titles with the Miami Heat, but I think Bronny landing in Miami would actually make a lot of sense as well.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Kyle Boone is the Joker from the Dark Knight. He is an agent of chaos. All he wants is Bronny getting drafted to the Miami Heat so the Miami Heat can bring LeBron back. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. You're not taking him over Jamal Shead. You're not taking him over KJ Simpson. There you go. I am fake disagreeing with Kyle Boone just for levity's sake.
It would be fun, though. LeBron, Bronny.
It would be the most wild storyline. There's no question about it.
It would. Yeah. We got to hit a break. Producer Jack is like, we got to get out of here. Really quick, taking a look at the notable upcoming NBA dates. Of course, the draft coming up later this month, June 26th and 27th, and then free agency beginning on July 6th.